This is listener-supported WRFI Community Radio. I'm Michael Memis. Ithaca College President Shirley Collado is departing from the college. She will be assuming the position of President and Chief Executive at College Track, which helps students facing systemic barriers get a bachelor's degree. Collado was named president in February of 2017 after the resignation of Thomas Rochon. Newly promoted Provost and Executive Vice President Lejeune Terry Cornish will serve as interim president for the 2021 to 2022 school year. Collado began the implementation of the Ithaca Forever strategic plan. This called for cutting departments as well as 116 full-time equivalent faculty positions, drawing backlash from students, faculty, and community members. Collado will serve as senior advisor to Cornish and the Board of Trustees until December 31st. Tompkins Cortland Community College President Dr. Orinthia Montague will be leaving the school. Montague was the fourth president in the school's history and has been in the position since spring 2017. She has accepted a position as president at Volunteer State Community College. According to 14850 today, her final day will be August 23rd. The TC3 Board of Trustees will hold a special meeting on July 12th to discuss the transition. The National Weather Service is giving a hazardous weather outlook for Tompkins and Schuyler counties due to Hurricane Elsa. The warning is for today and tonight and states, an eastward moving storm system will interact with moisture from the remnants of Elsa. Rain showers and thunderstorms could become heavy this afternoon and into tonight, with localized flooding possible, especially in areas which have received heavy rainfall in recent days. There is also a marginal risk for severe thunderstorms as well. Some storms may produce damaging winds. From tomorrow through Wednesday, there is a low probability for widespread hazardous weather. Schuyler County is reporting 0 new cases of COVID-19 and remains at 0 active cases. Tonight, thunderstorms and likely showers, lows in the mid-60s. Tomorrow, likely showers and highs in the low 80s. You can listen to this and all of WRFI's news content wherever you get your podcasts. This is WRFI News. Tourism seems to be on the up and up in Tompkins County. That's a story Nick Helmholtz shared at a Tompkins County Legislature committee on July 22nd. He's the tourism program director for the county.
Tourism is rebounding slightly more quickly than we had anticipated. It's still down to 2019. I don't want to make it sound like we're back to where we were pre-COVID, but it's coming in a more favorably than we expected.
The county has seen a surge in revenue from the room tax, which is an indicator that people are visiting. The tax charges people or businesses renting out a room for less than 30 days, and it added nearly $600,000 to county coffers. That's 20% above what was expected and the most in a quarter since the start of the pandemic. 46% of the room tax came from Airbnbs, but roughly a third of the county's short-term listings are on other platforms that don't have a sales or room tax agreement with Tompkins County. Helmholtz admitted he is hoping to remedy this in the future. Michael Memis, WRFI News. The Ithaca Police Department has revealed protest guidelines in collaboration with the city's Community Police Board, or CPB. The city previously didn't have any official ones. The guidelines will be shown in a brochure color-coded as green, yellow, and red. Michael Simmons is a member of the CPB and was a part of creating these guidelines. He explained these colors at a CPB meeting last week. The green activities are
what the city embraces about protesting and demonstrating in Ithaca,
like carrying signs and public prayer, the sort of things that won't create too much police activity. Yellow activities are a violation of city, state, or federal law, but aren't an immediate danger to the general public. One example of this would be painting graffiti on public or private property without authorization.
There might not be any arrests in that area, but there could be.
The last resort would be a dispersal order. Activities in the red zone are a legal activity, and unlike the yellow, they
are much, much more serious that will warrant an arrest and police action.
Like physical fighting or attempting to take a first responder's gear. There is also a more detailed version of the city's protest guidance. It's in the form of an 8-page document. Acting Police Chief John Jolie says this will be utilized by police as a training material. It is not known when this information will be released, but it will be on the City of Ithaca website. The brochures might also be released to the public in paper form. Michael Memis, WRFI.
People want to come to this spectacular natural area. And the problem is that up until now, it's essentially a hazardous waste site.
This is WRFI Community Radio News. I'm Jimmy Jordan. And that was the voice of Walter Hang, talking about Ithaca Falls, a spectacular natural area that's contaminated with lead. Efforts to clean up the lead have gone on for almost 20 years, and now the EPA is near completing a limestone wall to contain the pollutants. Once the wall is done, the site will be under the care of the New York Department of Environmental Conservation. WRFI intern Michael Memis has been reporting on the Ithaca Falls remediation efforts and is here to explain what this latest effort means for one of the waterfalls that makes Ithaca gorgeous. Michael, hello.
Hello, Jimmy.
Now, Michael, can you tell me about the remediation efforts that have happened at Ithaca Falls so far, and who exactly is Walter Hang? How does he tie into this?
So, Walter Hang is an environmental activist and Ithaca area resident and the founder of Toxics Targeting, a watchdog firm that provides data about toxic contaminations around New York State. He's been advocating for more substantial remediation efforts at Ithaca Falls for years, and has been following the work that has been done very closely. While Ithaca Falls is not on the national priority list, which would make it a Superfund site, it is a state Superfund site. Efforts to remediate the lead pollution have been underway since 2002. Since then, over 6,000 tons of lead-contaminated soil have been removed from the area. This containment wall that's going up could be seen as a capstone for the remediation efforts.
And how did all this lead get there in the first place?
The history of this lead contamination is pretty well known in the area. The lead waste has been there since the late 1800s. It's left over from the Ithaca Gun Factory, which was located right above Ithaca Falls on a ridge from the late 19th century to 1987. The lead contamination that's at Ithaca Falls is concentrated on that ridge, and it falls down into the gorge. It gets caught in the cliff face and lands on the trails. That movement of the lead pollution is what the containment wall is supposed to stop. So I actually took a walk with Hang through the Ithaca Falls natural area while the EPA was working on the containment wall.
And the reason that this whole area got lead polluted, number one, was because they test fired each shotgun. They shot the lead down these steel tubes, then they collected the lead. But then as the company spiraled down into ultimate bankruptcy, they stopped being so careful. So eventually they just dumped all the lead right off of this porch on one of the buildings, and it went down into the area called the island. And then on top of the island, there once was a smelting operation.
So, how bad is this lead pollution?
Well, the EPA defines lead level in soil as a hazard if it is over 400 parts per million in a, quote, play area. Soil in some areas around the falls have been found to have well above that number, with lead in some spots being measured with over tens of thousands parts per million in the soil. Even short-term exposure to high levels of lead can lead to symptoms such as kidney and brain damage and memory loss. But the exact health effects from the Ithaca Falls contamination haven't been measured, and there aren't any salient symptoms emerging from the community. Though it seems like there would be a high chance of exposure. Ithaca Falls is down the street from 3 schools. It's right in a residential neighborhood. It's also a tourist attraction. So overall, there's a lot of foot traffic going through there.
And so, although there's no strong signs that this lead is affecting the health of the community, the EPA felt there is reason enough to build this containment wall.
Right. This sort of effort has been a possibility since 2016, when they found further lead contamination. Hang has commended the EPA for this effort, though he thought it should have been done 5 years ago. The EPA is using federal Superfund dollars for its removal efforts and to build the containment barrier. Mike Basile is a community involvement coordinator for the EPA. He believes this wall will be a more permanent solution than the previous one. If there is any more work to be done, it will be the Department of Environmental Conservation in charge, rather than the EPA. Now, Basile says this transition is going smoothly.
We had an agreement with the DEC that this is the work that EPA will complete, and when we're done, they will assume any other work that may have to be accomplished in the future.
But it's hard to overstate just how strongly Hang disagrees with this course of action.
That makes me want to cry. It's just pathetic. I mean, I'm going to do everything I can to make sure that doesn't happen. So Mike is a great guy. He's worked so hard, again, for 30 years plus. And to give it to the state of New York that caused the problem, that knew about the problem and never cleaned it up, that turned a blind eye, turned a deaf eye.
It sounds like Hang has a very contentious relationship with the DEC.
Yes, Hang has been very critical of an action of state-level efforts to get this issue fixed. The DEC has done a small portion of the work in the area, but they did request that the EPA lead the cleanup efforts from the very beginning. The DEC has helped monitor the site. They've also sampled the soil in the area. But the DEC had called the cleanup complete in 2017, yet as we can see by the work being done now, it wasn't. And it doesn't sound like the DEC will be doing any major cleanups of the area in the future. Hang has been critical of local officials as well. He's given a bad mark for all three mayoral administrations that have been around while this issue was known. He's particularly critical of past mayor Alan Cohen for not supporting the effort early on to get it on the national priority list. Cohen was mayor when Ithaca acquired the Ithaca Falls site from Cornell. Lead contamination was understood when the city purchased the property and began its plans to turn it into a park. And at the time, Cohen said he didn't think visitors to Ithaca Falls were in danger. In July of 2000, Cohen is quoted in the Ithaca Journal saying that he's concerned that misinformation about the site's toxicity might be spreading and causing undue alarm in the general public. To current Ithaca Mayor Myrick's credit, he says that the city supports a comprehensive cleanup and wrote the EPA to request reconsideration of the area as a Superfund site. However, Myrick has refuted claims made by Hang and has historically deferred to the judgment of the EPA.
Like what sort of claims?
Well, Hang thinks the site is not suitable for people to frequent. There are signs in the natural area warning people about the lead on the site, but the city has no plans to prevent people from enjoying the falls. Hang is going to keep pushing for the site to be completely cleaned of lead. So his goal is to get the site on the national priority list by testing the water at Bolton Point Public Water System for lead. Cayuga Lake is a source of drinking water for over 40,000 people throughout multiple counties. If he can get it on the national priority list, then the EPA would have to get involved with the site again.
Okay, so I can imagine how the lead would get into Cayuga Lake, but what did Hang tell you? I mean, he sounds like he's convinced there's lead entering the water.
Precipitous weather and wind have led sediments at the top of the cliff to fall to the bottom. Some of that was noticeable while I was there due to rain the previous day. Flooding causes those sediments to get into the water.
The cliff is right next to the site, and that's how the gorge trail area got polluted. And then the gorge trail gets washed by flooding, and that sends it to Cayuga Lake, which is the source of drinking water for 40,000 people.
However, the 2021 Drinking Water Quality Report from Bolton Point shows no violations for state standards in lead levels. If it doesn't go on the national priority list, it is unclear if there will be future cleanup efforts at Ithaca Falls. Now, Hang acknowledges that the barrier going up is a huge step to containing the lead contamination.
So we know that more pollution is coming down, but now we have a barrier. So as long as you don't get this dirt on your hands, in your mouth, in your eyes, in your nose, on your sandwich, in your car, in your home, you're okay.
Hang has been calling for this wall to be put up for years. He thinks it's important, an important step. But again, there's really no way he's going to stop pushing for further remediation at Ithaca Falls.
I want the entire Ithaca Falls site cleaned up top to bottom, once and for all, on a comprehensive basis in strict compliance with all applicable regulatory requirements. And I want everyone to walk wherever they want without having to worry about the lead pollution. And when EPA did the...
Right, but the lead levels that Bolton Point has reported in the water it draws from Cayuga Lake don't seem likely to motivate any further cleanup. It seems unlikely Hang is going to be able to get the Ithaca Falls site onto the national priority list this way.
That's the way it seems. The only other motivation for removing the lead-contaminated soil at the site is actually coming from a housing project.
Oh, okay.
The former Ithaca gun factory is slated for a potential development project that was proposed in 2018. Before anything can happen, though, there needs to be a massive amount of soil moved off the site. But that's all happening more in the realm of developers and the private sector. The DEC is providing guidance and a plan to developers, but as far as government-led cleanup efforts go, this containment wall may be the largest effort we'll see. If the path to a complete removal of lead at Ithaca Falls is getting the site onto the national priority list, I think we're speaking in terms of a long shot.
But that won't stop Hang.
No, likely not.
Thank you, Michael. Nice talking to you.
My pleasure. Audiences returned to performances at the Wayland School of Music at the beginning of this month for the first time since March of last year, when the COVID-19 pandemic shut down the school and changed everything. While still not back to normal, having to limit capacity and restrict to those in the IC community, students were finally able to come back and play. I spoke to Eric Kibblesbeck, the concerts and facilities manager at the School of Music, who has been in charge of this process.
The seats that can be used are marked. We're keeping track of where everyone in the audience sits. People have to actually register for a seat as they come into the hall. All performers are using the agreed upon PPE, masks, bell covers, clarinet bags, whatever has been decided for that particular area. We blocked off the front, I think it's 5 rows, so that there's a little bit of additional space. Concerts need to go 30 minutes, take a break, carry on after an intermission. So things are generally shorter than they have been. Certainly my sense is people are glad to be doing it even under these conditions.
One of those who are glad is trumpet player Nate Oskowski, who had his first performance in front of an audience in nearly a year last Saturday for Jazz Ensemble. It felt like more than just a usual performance for him.
I'd say prior to this year, a lot of the time, sometimes we put on a concert just because that's what is expected of us each semester. You know, at the end of each block, we put on a concert and that's it. But I feel like after going so long without it, I feel like that concert was more than just making music. It was about sharing music with other people.
Instead of feeling more nervous with an audience, Oskowski felt more fueled by having people in the crowd. A similar sentiment was shared by Christian Labrie, a percussionist who performed last Saturday at a percussion ensemble.
I don't know why, but I actually was way less nervous to perform in front of people than I had been previously. And to be fair, the percussion ensemble concert didn't have a huge turnout, a huge audience. It was only a couple people. I just felt so much energy from being on stage with so many of my friends just to perform live again. I wasn't as nervous as I usually was.
Oskowski and Labrie have both attended performances in Ford Hall as well and have enjoyed the experience. Although circumstances are different, the stage crew does a good job of adjusting, said Oskowski.
If I'm being honest, there was definitely congestion leaving the concert, but I think that's just because for some people it's their first concert, so they're not used to the fact that they can't just exit wherever they want. The stage crew running the concert, they're very good at politely reminding people watching the concert, like, oh, this is an entrance only, so you can't exit this way, and they kindly usher them to the proper exits.
Kibblesbeck says he is fortunate to have amazing crews, but has hung around some performances this semester to see how everything is going. Currently, Ford Hall is open with a maximum of 70 guests from the Ithaca College community, and Hockett Family Recital Hall has a maximum of 30 guests from the Ithaca College community. The general public cannot come to these events, but can still watch via live stream. Kibblesbeck doesn't believe that the number of people allowed in Ford or Hockett will expand, or that it will open to the general public this spring.
What I've heard from Associate Dean Waltz and her interaction with the health and safety folks is that we shouldn't anticipate any changes at this time. I just don't think the campus as a whole is going to be allowing folks from the general public to come in this semester, and even including, family or anything like that. That's my understanding of where that is. But of course, if I get different directions, we'll change. But speaking for myself, I'd be surprised if we're able to change much this semester.
Oskowski, for one, is glad these current guidelines are in place.
If I'm being honest, I was worried that these concerts were going to go max capacity. If I'm being honest, we've been craving live music for so long, I thought it was going to be packed. But then when you actually get up on stage and look out of the audience, it doesn't look that big because everyone's properly spaced out. So big shout out to our facilities manager, Eric Kibblesbeck, for really taking those guidelines seriously.
Kibblesbeck is optimistic for the fall semester and beyond, but acknowledges that the COVID-19 situation is still unpredictable.
Like I said, we're dealing with conditions that a year ago we never would have imagined, but they are so much better than last semester when we couldn't do anything in the building, that we'll just all hope that everything continues to go well and We'll have fewer restrictions in the future.
Whatever it looks like in the fall, the attitude towards performing in front of audiences and attending concerts has shifted in a more positive direction. Labrie says he is more appreciative of these opportunities after nearly a year of not being able to do them.
Performing in person is so exciting, and I really took it for granted before COVID. I would dread concerts sometimes. I'd just be like, ugh, I gotta go do this thing tonight, and it's taking up so much of my time that I could be spending doing schoolwork or watching Netflix or something. Now that's absolutely not the case. I really try to take every rehearsal, every performance for what it is now, and I definitely appreciate it a lot more.
I myself have fond memories of concerts and recitals I have gone to in Wayland and look forward to seeing these world-class performances and performers in person sometime in the near future. It will be different from previous times, but in a good way. I will finally be able to see music with other people and won't be behind a computer or phone screen. For WICB News, I'm Michael Memes. Polls are everywhere, but how are they done, and what can they say about the future? One pollster in New York is Siena College Research Institute, who does polls in the state as well as other states in the region. I talked to Don Levy, the director of the institute, to learn more about the method behind this, as well as what it reveals about some key New York State figures. How do you ensure you still are getting the most representative results possible in these polls?
We now interview people via multiple methods, not just phone, but via various web techniques. And we always are comparing our sample, the group of people that respond to us, to a representative sample of that geography. So we're basing how different is our sample from that which the census has arrived at. In our field, we typically, when we are completed with a poll, we will statistically adjust through a process called iterative weighting to adjust the sample that we got to make it look like the national or the regional or the state sample that we're trying to generalize to. And we do that by adjusting the weight of each respondent's answer to make their particular demographic representative of the overall demographic. So simply put, if we don't get enough young people, it tends to be easier to get older people than younger people to respond to polls. So if we're supposed to have, let's say 20% of the respondents, under the age of 30, and we get 14%, then we will weight up the young people and weight down the older people. It's interesting that we're concerned not just with having a poll or a sample that is representative by demographics, but in today's world, we have to have people who are representative by their ideological stance as well. Because over the last several years, we have found that people on the right side of the political ledger tend to be even systematically less inclined to participate in public opinion polls. In part, we believe that's due to the label that's been affixed to, I guess it would affix to you, it would affix to me, that being that the media is somehow fake and biased. So there's more of a hesitancy on the part of the people on the right end of the spectrum than on the left to participate in polls. So we've begun to weight by ideology as well, not just by race, ethnicity, age, education, and income as we had in the past.
I know after the 2016 election, there was a lot of skepticism towards these polls because it had predicted Clinton would win and Trump ended up winning, I guess. What is your response to that? And I guess what changes were made, if any, to respond to this criticism?
Well, that's a big question. There was the problem that existed in polling was in state polling, not national polling. The error that occurred in 2016 primarily was due to not taking into consideration sufficiently educational attainment in the sample. So that was one of the problems in 2016. The other was that there were the states in the great Midwest, the northern Midwest, Michigan, Wisconsin, to some degree Pennsylvania, were underpolled. And those states ended up being the crucial states that provided Trump with a victory over Clinton. So there just wasn't a big enough sample.
Obviously, two big scandals with former Governor Andrew Cuomo, with the nursing home scandal, and the sexual harassment accusations, and then just James' report. I guess, could you talk about how Cuomo was affected in terms of, like, polling-wise, how that shifted as a result of those two scandals?
During, the pandemic period, New Yorkers tended to feel as though Andrew Cuomo was doing a very good job addressing the pandemic. During the period of time when he was holding his daily news conferences, he had a tremendous amount of public support. In fact, his public support rose from where it had been prior to the pandemic. As things moved on and the question about the manner in which he and his administration handled moving patients into nursing homes initially, and then subsequent to that, releasing data about what happened to those people, that was one area where, we'd ask a question, overall, how good of a job do you think Andrew Cuomo has done managing New York through the pandemic? And he would get, very high numbers. He'd get numbers around 60, 65% that were approved. But the one number that he would get that would be highly negative would be his handling of nursing homes. So that dragged on his popularity. Fast forward to when the first allegations about sexual harassment came forward, then again, that threw his support, moving negatively. At first, New Yorkers were hesitant to say that they believed that he had committed sexual harassment. A small plurality initially believed it, but a large percentage of New Yorkers said, I just don't know. Finally, when the AG's report was released and, virtually every single political figure in New York called for his resignation, his numbers, just fell right, through the bottom. But interestingly, at the same time, we said, well, looking back over the last 10 years, Andrew Cuomo was governor for a very long time. Looking back over the last 10 years, do you think Cuomo did an excellent, good, fair, or poor job as governor? And here, despite the fact that 67% said he should have resigned, we find that 50% say he did an excellent or good job as governor.
Moving on to Kathy Hochul, who's now the governor of New York, former lieutenant governor. And in terms of polling, it looks like she has the most positive reception, but a ton of people are undecided or I don't know. And I get that she's new, but how does that expected to change over time? And where do you think that will break in terms of approving or disapproving of her?
I think that Kathy Hochul was largely unknown. The job of lieutenant governor of the state of New York has no specific job description. Kathy Hochul was an extremely active lieutenant governor. She probably went to more ribbon cuttings than either you or I could even imagine. But in terms of the general population of the state, she was not well known. And when we would occasionally poll Kathy Hochul while she was lieutenant governor, the vast majority of New Yorkers said, I have no opinion. I don't know anything about her. So, instantly she becomes the governor, at a time, as we just were discussing, when the voters of the state of New York were kind of the mind of anybody but Cuomo. In terms of the reception that Hochul has been given, the reception has been positive. People are willing to give her a chance. They see her as more collaborative than was Cuomo. They tend to feel as though she has sufficient experience. They're excited about there being the first woman governor of the state. She enters a period right now where almost instantly she's going to be in competition for not just being elected governor, but to compete for the Democratic nomination for governor. When we ask people, as things that stand now, would you vote to elect Kathy Hochul, prefer someone else, or that you don't know? Only a third, 36%, say, yeah, I'm prepared to reelect Kathy Hochul as governor. So that leaves about a third saying they want someone else, about a third saying, I don't know yet. I'll have to wait and see.
I thank Don for taking the time to talk with me. This was just touching the surface, as the world of polls is so large and there is so much data to organize and analyze. There should be a lot of polls coming out soon about the 2022 midterms, especially in regards to the governor's race. For WICB News, I'm Michael Memis.